You didn't just wake up one day and become an empath. There were stages. And right now, one of those stages is quietly destroying you, and you probably don't even know which one. Here's what shocked me when I first discovered this through Jungian psychology. Most empaths who feel completely broken, completely burned out, completely lost in other people's pain, they're not failing at being sensitive. They're stuck in one specific stage of a psychological awakening that Carl Jung mapped out over a century ago. And once you know which stage you're in, everything changes. Stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through could be the most clarifying 7 minutes of your self-understanding journey. Let me start with something Jung said that most people in the wellness space completely ignore. He didn't talk about empaths the way Instagram does. He talked about what he called the porous ego, a psyche so open, so permeable, that it receives the emotional content of the unconscious collective before the individual even has a chance to process their own inner world. That's you. That's the empath experience described in actual psychological terms. And the reason this matters is because Jung also said that a porous ego doesn't stay that way forever. It either develops or it fractures. The 4 stages of empath awakening are that development process. They are not linear in the way most people expect, they are not pretty, and at least one of them is going to feel like it's ending you. So let's go through them. The first stage is what I call the absorber. This is where most empaths spend their childhood and early adulthood. You feel everything, but you have no framework for what you're feeling. You cry at commercials, you walk into a room and immediately sense who's in pain, who's angry, who's pretending to be fine. You take on your mother's anxiety as if it were your own. You leave social situations completely drained, and you don't understand why. Here's the thing Jung would point to immediately. In this stage, there is no psychological boundary between your inner world and the emotional atmosphere around you. You are not empathizing in the conscious sense. You are merging. And the reason this happens connects directly to what Jung called the persona, the outer mask the psyche develops to navigate the world. In the absorber stage, the empath's persona is almost entirely built around being whatever the room needs. The peacemaker, the good listener, the one who just understands. Sounds beautiful from the outside, right? But here's what most people completely miss. While you're busy absorbing everyone else's emotional content, your own shadow is growing, unexamined, unmet, enormous. And that shadow is what eventually forces the move into stage 2. Now here's where it gets interesting. Stage 2 is the one I call the collapse, and this is the stage that is breaking most of you watching this right now. The collapse happens when the absorber identity can no longer hold. Maybe it's a relationship with a narcissistic partner that completely dismantled your sense of self. Maybe it's burnout so severe you couldn't recognize your own feelings anymore. Maybe it's a moment where you gave everything, and the person you gave it to didn't even notice. Jung would call this the eruption of the shadow. All the emotional content you absorbed from others, all the needs you buried, all the anger you told yourself wasn't spiritual enough to feel, it surfaces. And when it surfaces in an empath, it often looks like depression. It looks like a sudden inability to care. It looks like rage that scares you. It looks like numbness so complete that you wonder if your sensitivity was ever real. Here's the psychological reality. It was real. You are not broken. You are being asked by your own psyche to finally stop absorbing and start differentiating. Differentiating means learning the difference between what is yours and what belongs to someone else. It is the single most important psychological skill an empath can develop, and it is brutal at first. I want to be honest with you about that. The collapse stage can last months. For some people, it lasts years. And the reason it lasts so long is that most empaths try to fix the collapse by absorbing more healing content, more spiritual practices, more relationships with people who need them, instead of turning inward. If that's you, I'm not judging you. I'm telling you there's a different direction. Because on the other side of the collapse is stage 3. And this one is where things start to feel genuinely different. Stage 3 is what I call the witness. This is the stage where you begin developing what Jung called ego consciousness, a stable, boundaried sense of self that can observe emotional experience without being consumed by it. You stop asking, "Why do I feel this way?" and start asking, "Is this feeling even mine?" That's not a small shift. That is a fundamental restructuring of how your psyche relates to the world. In the witness stage, empaths often report something fascinating. They feel less intensely, but they understand more deeply. They can sit with a grieving friend without taking the grief home. They can recognize a manipulative dynamic without getting pulled into it. They can feel their own anger without immediately transforming it into self-blame. Neuroscience actually supports this. Research on interoception, the brain's ability to sense internal bodily states, shows that highly sensitive people who develop this kind of reflective awareness show different activation patterns in the anterior insula, the region responsible for emotional awareness. They are not less sensitive, they are more precise. This is crazy, but the empath who learns to witness rather than absorb actually becomes more genuinely empathic because they're finally responding to what's real rather than what they projected. But that's not the most surprising part. Stage 4, the one I call the oracle, is where individuation, Jung's central life process, reaches something like completion for the empath. The oracle is not a mystical title. It's a psychological description. It is the empath who has integrated their shadow, developed ego boundaries, differentiated their own emotional experience from the collective, and can now use their sensitivity as an instrument of conscious insight rather than unconscious absorption. Jung described individuation as becoming who you actually are, not who you performed for the world, not who trauma shaped you into, but the authentic, wholeness-seeking self underneath all of it. The oracle is that. And here's what I want you to hear clearly. The oracle does not lose sensitivity. They gain sovereignty over it. They feel deeply, but they are not at the mercy of what they feel. They can be present with human pain without being destroyed by it. They can hold space without losing themselves in it. They carry their wound, but the wound no longer carries them. So let's bring this home. You have 4 stages: the absorber, the collapse, the witness, and the oracle. Most empaths are caught somewhere between the first and second, pouring themselves into everyone else while their shadow quietly expands. The collapse is not a failure. It is your psyche demanding differentiation. And the path from witness to oracle is not about feeling less. It is about feeling with consciousness. Here's the question I genuinely want you to think about and share below. Which stage do you recognize yourself in right now? And what's the one thing that shifted or is shifting for you inside it? I read every comment. If this video gave you a clearer map of yourself, please give it a like. It helps this kind of real, depth-level content reach the people who actually need it. Subscribe and hit the bell because we go this deep every single day on this channel. I'll see you in the next one.